This rocket mass heater isn't done being built, but we've been using it anyway. And the thing I should probably point out with, when we're talking about the care and feeding of a rocket mass heater, is how we've got 2 fire bricks over the wood feed right now. And so then when you finish a fire, you generally close the 2 fire bricks. As it gets down to a couple of embers, you might move them really close to each other. But then when it gets to be done, you put them together. And that slows the airflow going through the whole system. So that way all the warmth you've built up in the mass isn't just carried on outside. Usually what will happen is you don't need to do that, but it kind of helps. But usually what will happen is that the heat will stratify inside of the barrel, kind of making it like an upside down P-trap. So all the heat will be up here, so it won't try to go down and through the system. So this thing kind of acts as a bit of a thermo plug for the system. Now I'm going to just light it like I normally would, and I'm going to try anyway. Now I guess I should point out that I've been around Ernie and Erica so much, I've seen them both light fires. And what Ernie does is he gets a ball of paper and he lights it in his hand and he waits until it's about to burn his fingers. And then he does bowling for prime. He'll throw the ball of flaming paper underneath into the burn tunnel to try and get it underneath the riser, which is about in the middle of the barrel. And if it doesn't go all the way, then he puts his hand up there and he hits this burning ball with his fingers, which just makes me think, man, that guy must have some thick skin. And then Erica will do basically the same thing, but she'll take a bunch of paper and she'll wad it up into a piece that's shaped like this, and she'll light one end on fire and then push it in. I'm a lot lazier than either of those two, and on top of that, I don't like the idea of having the fire out here. I like to keep all the smoke in there and no smoke out here. So I do it a very different way. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I got this little piece of cardboard. I seem to lose it or accidentally burn it a lot, so it's easy to make another one. But this is how I scoop out some of the ash. I want to leave most of the ash in there. Well, maybe not most, maybe half. But every time I get a little bit of ash out. Ta-da! Put it in there, set it aside. Now I'm going to go and start just putting a bunch of paper down in the system, trying to get it underneath the riser first. And since I'm going to not use any kindling, because I'm lazy, I'm going to put extra paper in here. Now this paper has been accumulating for months because during the summer when we don't use the rocket mass heaters, I just take every little scrap of paper that I otherwise would throw away and put it in here. So rather than recycling it or throwing it away, we're going to use it to start rocket mass heaters. Amazon has been really generous at shipping us all kinds of burnable things with other stuff that we bought. But a lot of this stuff is, I don't know, just packaging or mail, stuff like that. So I just take it and try to wad it all up and throw it in there and hopefully get a fire started. It doesn't always work. Now with Ernie and Erica's techniques, they'll make a lot of kindling. Ernie will even like take a regular piece of kindling about this big and whip out his pocket knife and whittle it up into lots of little tiny bits like toothpicks. And he'll use that to start a fire. But I'm just lazier than that. So this looks like some kind of bill came and they sent us this lovely fire starter with the bill. A love letter! And we kept the love letter, but we're gonna burn the envelope. These are fun! I know I shouldn't use this much propane, but the great thing is it seems like these things last for years in the propane, and I just think they're fun. The other stuff that you have is always like a little lighter, in which case I might burn my finger or something. And I don't know, I just like using this. So there, I can kind of see a little bit of an orange glow, meaning that there's paper on fire in there. Until I hear the crackling, of the fire, I put little bits of cardboard in between the other sticks. They might act like kindling. That crackling sound, it kind of is usually my key that it started. Now, because I didn't put any kindling in there, sometimes it won't start. But usually I get away with it. So it's always kind of a little bit of gambling for laziness. It sounds like a good strong draw. Now, if you've built a good fire for a rocket mass heater, then you won't need the little bricks on the sides when you're starting it. But I kind of feel like, you know, then it's kind of like, oh, you're going to test how good you are. If you've done a good job, then you don't put the bricks on, the smoke doesn't come back up, and all the fire stays down very low, and all the smoke goes inside the system and gets reburned. If you've done a poor job, it might try to smoke back or something like that, in which case you might slide a brick a little ways over the hole to kind of reduce, to make it so that way it's pulling so strong at the point of entry that no smoke has a chance to come back. But that could also build a competing chimney where the flames start to work their way up the sticks a little bit. So if I was gonna walk away from this fire, I would probably, in fact, what I usually do if I'm gonna walk away is I'll close it towards the front a little bit, and that makes sure that it's pulling more from the back. So that way it's getting, because if the air is coming from the back will start to burn better. But this one's going so good, I don't think we need to do that. And I'm not planning on walking away from it, but at this point I would probably sit down or go do something else, because once I hear the crackling, that's my cue that it started, the fire's good, I don't need to worry about it. Now, right now, I can see a little bit of the cardboard I was putting in is kind of near the top. And so it's possible that that'll start to ignite and come up. But if the draw is good and strong, which it sounds like it is, then that probably won't happen. And if I'm standing right here, I can watch it and monitor it, make sure it's all okay. This building is what we call the Fisher-Price house. It's a double wide, built in 2010. So you can be sure that there's many layers of plastic in the walls. So when all the windows are closed, it's like a Ziploc bag in here. Now, when there is no fire in here and we turn on the kitchen fan, you can feel it blowing because, you know, there's a route all through here and outside. And so then it'll pull the air from outside inside through this. Unless, of course, the bricks are covering it. If the kitchen fan is going and you try to start a fire, that usually doesn't work very well. That's a disaster. You might open a window to start the fire so that you don't have this Ziploc bag problem. Once the fire is going, we could turn on the kitchen fan, both bathroom fans, and run the clothes dryer, and this thing will still run the correct way. The draw on this one is just that good. In fact, this rocket mass heater might possibly be the rocketiest rocket mass heater ever built. When we first constructed it, it would suck the flames off of the wood. We actually shrunk down the wood feed to help mitigate that problem. And we did a bunch of other things too to kind of slow it down because it was too rockety. The amazing thing though is if we go and look outside, the exhaust will be very, very clear. Wow, listen to it roar now. It's alive. Once a year, we pop off this barrel and we clean out the ash that's inside. And we also have another clean out right on the end of right there where we can open it up and kind of clean out from that point too. And we can clean out some of this stuff from over there. So there's a few clean out points. We'll have a fire in here and then we'll burn it and it gets uncomfortably warm inside. And so that means the mass is probably going to be very, very warm. And then we shut the fire down. And then usually all the next day we don't have a fire at all. And it'll still be plenty warm in here. And then we might even go a couple of days without a fire. But on the third day, it's like, it's a little it's a little cool in here, so we better have another fire. So still, this is so much better than like with a conventional wood stove. And I've heard of people getting up every 2 hours throughout the night to put wood into their fire and doing all kinds of nutty things to try and stay warm all night. Whereas we can run, get it nice and hot in here, and then go like 2 or 3 days without having to start another fire. I've got one. I've had people, who want to start the fire for the very first time, and there are things that they do, they just have to do it their way, and that's not the way it's supposed to be done. You don't put your wood into the burn tunnel. The wood sits vertically inside the wood feed, always. I don't know why, but people just want to kind of tuck it down inside like that, and that's not how it works. That's not appropriate. We do put some paper down there to kind of prime the riser. I think a common one that I see is people don't fill the wood feed. You should really fill it with wood. And in fact, right now I'm kind of seeing that enough wood's burned that I want to put in there sticking. So then I don't know why it is, but people are like, oh, I'm going to just put like a couple of pieces of kindling in and then light that. That's going to lead to the fire coming up those sticks and smoke coming out. If you put a bunch of wood in it, it sort of chokes it. It's got to really pull the air through there in a really strong way, which really keeps the fire low, which is what you want. Because if the fire starts to come up high, it starts to create a competing chimney, which leads to smoke back. And from rocket mass heaters, from just general use of a rocket mass heater, I would say smoke back is the #1 problem. And you just don't want smoke in your house. That's not okay. And so I like the idea of keeping all the smoke inside the system. Eventually this fire is going to get to the point that it's just a bunch of coals. And at that point, I usually take the bricks and I close them down like 90% of the way. And then when it's a few coals, I'll close it down to like 98% of the way. And when I see no coals at all, I close it down all the way. Now, on the other hand, sometimes I get distracted and I'm doing other things and I forget about it. And it's like, yeah, not that big of a deal. It'll be fine. Closing the bricks, I think, improves the efficiency a bit, but probably not a huge amount. But hey, the cool thing was I started it without any kindling. Adventures in Lazy! All right, just a couple days later, a couple more notes. This is the standard length of a piece of wood that you would use for most fires. It's about 15 to 16 inches long. Let's take a quick look. This one happens to be 15 and 3/8 inches long. But now, if you start putting these in when there's a bunch of coals, like right now there's a bunch of coals in there, you start dropping in wood on top of that, then the wood will stick up higher than the wood feed. And then if you decide that you want to decrease the amount of the size of the opening of the wood feed, you wouldn't be able to do it. This would be blocking your way. And that's a problem. That's not okay. So what I do is that I keep a bit of a stock of some shorter stuff, usually about 10 inches. Let's see how big this one is. This one's about 10 3/4 inches. And so then I can put a bunch of these on top of the coals and I'll be able to move the bricks around still without a problem. Oh, another thing is that when I'm cutting firewood, I go for wrist size or smaller. Now granted, with a conventional wood stove, you could stick bigger blocks. And with a rocket mass heater, you can stick big blocks in too. Ernie likes to do that. He'll stick something in that just barely fits in the wood feed, and he can burn this enormous chunk of wood. I prefer to have my fires go faster and hotter, so I go with wrist size or smaller. So let me just go ahead and fill this up with the smaller stuff here. There we go. And then if I need to close the bricks, I can.
I get a hard time because I believe in having what is called fines, which is fine kindling, and people give me a hard time because I use small fines. and then medium-sized wood. So medium-sized kindling, which would be, that, about medium-sized. This, and then after it gets started, I just start piling in big wood. It seems that I'm unusual in this, that I want fines in my kindling pile. The other thing is that when I light it, I make a little ball of paper before I light it up. And I use flint and steel, but that's not so unusual these days. So I get a little ball of paper, light it up, and then I just throw it down the burn tunnel till it's up underneath the heat riser, and I put a couple more pieces of paper in there until it brings it out to the burn tunnel. So you can see the light on the inside. It's lighting up. And usually I use paper bags because newspaper just doesn't have the integrity that paper bags do. Right? And this is new. This is a new one, so I'm putting more paper than I usually use. I mean, I use half a paper bag at home. And I just dump my kindling on top. Make sure it's vertical. Put my mediums in there. Sometimes I gotta go and, if I didn't get my secondary piece of newspaper in there close enough, it doesn't catch. Which it did not. So the first piece I throw in there, sometimes I can use it to light my second and third pieces. And this one I could not. So, and it depends on the length of the burn tunnel whether I can get away with that. And now I gotta find that lighter I just had. There we go. So I mean, I don't get any kind of big hurry about it, because I don't need to get into a big hurry about it. And I don't get all kinds of choked up about you know, the organization, other than it needs to go vertical. And as you can tell, if you can hear that, hear the crackling already, I'm already lit. That's why I use the fines. Because once the wood catches, the rest of the wood's going to catch. And I just stack it vertical. Yeah, I need some bigger stuff. That one's a little long. So my first load is essentially medium and fine wood. And as you can tell, it doesn't take long to light. And then we'll fiddle with that a little bit as it burns down. And once that's down, I start throwing big stuff at it. I like to limit the air just a little bit. Some people don't, but this one we haven't burned enough to have too much ash in the bottom. But when I reach in and clean it out, and I reach in with my hand, I don't use anything else. I just reach in down the burn tunnel with my hand, scrape out basically 2 or 3 handfuls of ash, put them in the ash bucket. And I do that every time I light our stove. So I guess what I have in the bottom of it is maybe 1/8 of an inch of ash. And I like to keep ash in there because it insulates against the bottom and makes it easier to light a fire. If you want to see the reality of this, vacuum a box stove and try to light it. Go in with a vacuum cleaner and clean it out with a vacuum cleaner. and then try to light it, and then go in there with a handful of ash and spread it across the bottom and try to light it then. It is very, very telling. That'll probably be the next one that goes in. Okay, yearly service is I take the barrel off our stove, and I vacuum out the manifold, and inspect the heat riser, and vacuum off the heat riser, make that all clean, and then I run the shop vac down the exhaust ducting, and just clean out any light ash that I've got in there. That's an every year job. Okay. I don't have to worry about having a chimney sweep come and clean, but I do need to do basic maintenance on my system. And at the same time, I pop all the inspection caps and take a look and make sure it's not, make sure I'm not getting any creosote or undue buildup in one way or another. That way I can keep an eye on my stove. And in 10 years, I haven't seen a single system creosote up. I've seen them get a little soot in them, but I've never seen one creosote. So, yearly care, you know, take care of it every year. And it depends on, if you're keeping your house at 80 degrees, take care of it every twice a year, midway through the year, because you're burning so much wood. You know, your wood usage determines how often you need to clean the system. So it's how often you let it cool down, vacuum it out, put it all back together, start over again. All right, so if you're keeping a 1,500 square foot house at 80 degrees all winter long, you're going to clean it more than once that winter. It's just going to happen. You're using too much wood so it won't, you know, for it not to happen. But in normal usage, I burn 23 pounds of wood a night on our system, and I clean it out once a year. And in reality, I don't even have to clean it out once a year. I just do. It's a habit. It's the same habit you'd have getting a chimney sweep to come in and clean your chimney if you're using a box stove, or you should have, right? So there's my plug for chimney sweeps, my plug for wood efficiency. There you go. That's all I'm doing. I'm off the box.
Windows of firebox doors, and this has a top window, tend to be black or grubby at least. So the way to clean them is take a damp cloth and dip it in the ashes of the stove itself and just wipe it, and that will take off the black goo or grubby stuff. Okay, lighting, some paper, maybe also some cardboard, small pieces in front of the port of this firebox, and then when that catches on, a couple of pieces on that, and then when that catches on again, load it. Okay, let's do that. I light the paper with this because I don't have matches online. And after that I can more or less load it up as much as it can hold, and then have it running on its own.
When you're lighting a walker stove, if you got no mass, everything's cool, it's a good idea to get a little flame going under the riser and get things moving. So I was just cooking some bacon. So I'm just going to use a little of this that I used to wipe down my cast iron pan and tuck it under the riser. So all that's doing up there is warming things up and getting things moment. I'm not expecting that to have any ignition on the fuel here. It's just creating the draw. So I'll block this off as best I can. I'm not doing the best job here, but I think it'll probably work. And then I'll try and create a little path through some of my finer fuel. And then, you know, usually I just use a match or a piece of wood of some kind, but since this is all new and cold and I'm going to try and just get her going, it'd be great to have a little sustained flame. So I'm going to use a little bit of paper here and just get a flame going right behind those sticks. And I'll probably use a little more paper to keep it going, just long enough to ignite my kindling. Kind of make sure it stays tucked up against the kindling there. And you should be able to get her to go right away if you've got good kindling, good fuel, your draft is sufficient. Like I said, if we had mass hooked up and it was warm, it would achieve this effect by itself. Now if the mass is cold, you've got a whole different story, because you'd get this hot gas going out there and then there'd be just a ton of cooling that would be acting on it. So in that case, a lot of times, if it's a well-built heater, at that point, and by well-built I mean it's got a lot of extraction built in. So in other words, it's got a lot of cooling power. And if that's the case, a lot of times you got to give them a helping hand to get warmed up. And a bypass is a great way to achieve that, a great passive way to achieve that. Some people advocate fans, things like that. I'm definitely of the mind that a passive system is better because you can use it when the power's out, but I am not above using a fan if the house is getting smoky. So as that kindling starts to drop, I'll work in some larger fuel behind it. I try not to push too much of that up into the burn tunnel. That doesn't do any good, but you have to a little bit. But you need some under your fuel too, so it can be a touchy balance. Got a lot of reach. Oh, it's already drawing, that's good. So on the topic of lighting rocket mass heaters, everyone will tell you that you're doing it wrong. So I found out the only real good way to discover if you're doing it right is to light one yourself about 10 times. And I think everyone's method is just a little bit different. Which is not to say that there's one way to do these things. This just happens to be the way I enjoy doing it. Popping is a good sign, although not a sure thing. Lots of popping is a good sign. Maybe I just need some more. And maybe there's something to the notion that every rocket mass heater is a little different. So I know how to start the teepee.